Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Critchfield, and I will be giving you a presentation on narrative therapy. So we're going to just start from the beginning with the theorists. Michael White and David Epstein, or the major theorists in narrative therapy, they actually were not grounded in psychology like many of our other theorists. They were grounded in social work. So this theory is based on sociology, anthropology, and philosophy rather than psychology. The very basics you need to know is that narrative therapy is not a systems theory. It's based on social constructivism. There is no reality, only the stories we have about reality, and that we are organized by our stories, not our personalities. We all have discourses throughout our life. Narrative therapy is based on discourse. A discourse is the way that we talk about something. There are many discourses in our life as well as within our families. We have political, gender, religious discourses, and our families have rules about how we understand the world and how we relate to the world. How we see ourselves is influenced by professional as well as institutional discourses. The way that the society shapes us is by the way they talk about things, and that we adopt those or we don't adopt those discourses. But that is how we are shaped. Narrative therapy believes that we have the ability to make meaning as well as rewrite or reauthor the meaning of our past events. We each develop dominant stories in our lives. These dominant stories come from our lived experiences that are interpreted into either a thin description or a thick description. So experience is interpreted and ends up being thick or thin. A thin description is just a surface description. It almost always focuses on weaknesses, such as bad, lazy, dysfunctional. You can apply it to an individual or a whole family. We combat thin descriptions by creating alternative stories with thick descriptions. So, in addition to writing an alternative story, the story must be described in detail and be rich. So the role of a therapist in narrative therapy, they take a non-knowing approach. They are not the expert. They assume an investigative approach. So they probably ask lots of questions, and they do a lot of active listening. They do not interpret, diagnose, or intervene, but they do encourage, ask, join with, and contribute to. There are 5 stages of narrative therapy. First is the problem definition. Second, mapping the influence. Third, evaluating and justifying. Fourth, identifying unique outcomes. And fifth, restoring. Some techniques you can use for narrative therapy include externalizing the problem, developing unique outcomes, deconstructing all stories and constructing alternative stories. You can use certificates of completion, therapeutic letter writing, or even an outsider witness. So with externalization, the person is the problem. The person is not the problem is the problem. So you label the problem as separate from yourself and bring it outside of you so that you can deal with it. Sometimes you can use an outside object to symbolize the problem. Some examples of externalization are of a 10-year-old girl who is having problems sleeping because of her incessant worry. So she labeled her problem the sleep thief. Another one is a young child who had encopresis, labeled his problem sneaky poo. Adults may prefer to not be so creative, and they may prefer to just label their problems as worry or fear or anxiety. The great part about externalization is it takes the shame and blame off of the person. This is especially useful in families whenever scapegoating is a natural tendency. Some tools for externalization could be using puppets or stuffed animals to help the person visualize the problem outside of themselves. Therapeutic letter writing is not actually the client writing a letter, it is the therapist writing the letter. So between sessions, the therapist may write a letter to the client highlighting what was talked about and where they're going and what stories they've already developed. They say that one letter writing session is equal to 3 to 5 face-to-face sessions as far as effectiveness. You can also use an outsider witness. This is a trusted person that's invited into the session to witness the client's story. Oftentimes, this witness has experienced something similar and has worked through it in their own way. The witness relays what they heard and gives their life comparison. The witness has a similar experience but a different narrative, giving the client opportunities to restory their narrative. So reauthoring is kind of the whole point of narrative therapy. You rewrite the dominant story so as to reflect often neglected yet still significant details. Whenever the therapist highlights these neglected but significant details, it's called sparkling. They deconstruct the thin descriptions and build thick descriptions. Michael White used a method called scaffolding, which is a methodical step-by-step questioning, and it's used in mapping the influence. When you work with families, the whole family needs to be free from totalization, diagnosis, and blame so that they can form an alliance against the problem. A successful therapy ends by building a community or a family, including persons who have confronted the same problem in their lives. I hope you guys learned something that maybe you didn't know before, and I hope you enjoyed it, so thank you.